Almost 4 weeks after the violence started between the Meiteis and Kukis in Manipur, the state is still burning. The violence has displaced more than 50,000 people and over 200 people have been injured. Most importantly, over 70 people have been killed. In this interview, we'll speak with a college student who has seen her family members being killed in the violence.
I turned back for the last time and on the road I saw my brother lying on the road covered with blood, and my mother was right beside my brother. They damaged all of the window glasses first, and someone brought kerosene, poured it all over the car, and they started burning our cars. A guy from the backside shouted, "The cookies, train missiles, they're all the same, and let us go let us kill them, or if we're not going to do that, let us go already. Let them go already." They constantly hit me with sticks and the large stones on my back. I can even feel them right now as I'm talking. They did not even spare the baby. The women were hitting the baby, slapping and punching the baby, but my aunt, she tried her best to cover the baby. Imphal, I would not call it a home anymore.
Kim, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us what happened?
My name is Jamngaihkim Gangte. I'm 20 years of age and I'm a second-year science student, currently studying in Imphal, and I'm a victim of mob violence and an eyewitness of the murder of my brother and my mother.
You lost your mother and brother on May 4th,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
How was it the previous day? Were there any signs of ethnic fault lines between the Meiteis and tribal communities, and particularly between Meiteis and Kukis?
So it all started on 3rd May. Even that day, it was a very normal day. Since I'm a student, I went to college, I attended my classes, met up with my friends, and I even hanged out with them the whole day. And on the evening of 5th May, the same day, around 5 p.m., we started hearing news of the tribal-dominated communities, tribal-dominated localities being attacked by large mobs. And there was no security provided even in that areas, and it got worse. So around 10 p.m. we decided to go over to a relative's place for the night, and we packed some of our clothes. And around 10 p.m. our relative's place was closer to the minister's quarters, so with the thought that it might be safer for us, we went over to their place, and their place was around 5-kilometer walk from our place, 5-minute walk from our place. And even on the road, we could not turn on the flashlights. We just walked there in the dark as fast as we could, and we reached the place. We stayed the night at our relative's place.
When you went to your relative's place, how many people were there with you?
My whole family, my cousin's family, and the family of my relatives, the house owners.
So I guess there were more than 15 people. How many
15,
people?
around 20 to 25 people.
Then you returned from your relative's place in the morning on May 4th, right?
May 4th, yes.
What happened on May 4th?
May 4th, so in the morning around 6 a.m. we returned to our house, and then after some time we heard news about escorts being arranged from the nearby CRPF camp to our hometown. So we packed our bags, and first my brother himself, he went to the camp to confirm the news, and since the road was clear and there was nobody on the road, he came to pick us up. Then we packed our bags and we loaded our stuffs into the car, and then we started around 10 a.m. and so we started driving. We went by 2 cars. Our car, my brother was driving the first car and my cousin was driving the second car, and we were the first one to drive. So we started driving. Then right in front of the DC office, mobs have already gathered on the street. There were around 200 to 250 people. We nearly took a U-turn, but then the mob, they stopped us from behind and they opened our doors and forcefully pulled all of us out of the car. And then first they brought large sticks, and then they damaged all of the window glasses first, and someone brought kerosene, poured it all over the car, and they started burning our cars. And after a minute, they started chasing my brother in the opposite direction, and all of us, we started chasing our family members. We started chasing my brother too, like we were trying to protect him from the mob. But then they did not spare any of us. They just hit all of us with big sticks. They were holding bamboo sticks. Some were holding bricks, large stones, and they just hit us in any way they could. And then
Before this, could you tell us how many people were there in the car with you before you were stopped? And was there any line of questioning? Was your family questioned when your car was stopped, whether you are Kukis or Metis? Could you tell us?
So there were 6 of us in the car: me, my brother, my mother, my cousin, my aunt, and a babe, my sister-in-law, and a baby, a 1-year-old baby. And when we drove to that area where the mob had gathered, they checked from outside whether we were Métis. Like we were Métis, and as tribals, we like have different features, so they can just tell that we're tribals. So they pulled us out of the car forcefully, and then, like I've said, they burnt our cars. Damage hit the windows, and then first they were chasing my brother in the opposite direction. Then all of us, our family members, we were chasing him, but they just pull us apart and then hit all of us with sticks and stones. And after about 5 minutes, a Métis man, he gathered all of us and made us sit in a bench, and then he asked whether we were Kukis or not. Then, so as to defend ourselves, we said we were Mizo, and then the guy, he actually agreed to let us go already. But then the mob nearly came down on that guy too, thinking he was trying to support us, and even asked the guy whether he was our family member or not. Then at that time, another vehicle drove in. So while the mob was busy with the other car, the guy took us to a nearby house, and we hid in that house for some time, for about 5 minutes. And inside the house, actually before that day, on WhatsApp, all the contact numbers of the officers were circulated online. So I tried ringing up all of them, but none of them were working. And I even dialed 112, the helpline number, but I couldn't reach the number too. And after some time, the mob, they came to know that we were hiding inside the house, and they started pelting stones at that house. They even pushed the wall, since it was a very how do I say, kacha house. They pushed the house, and even the house owner, he told us to go away, since his house could be in danger since we were inside. And a guy pushed the door open, and then since we know they were mostly attacking man, we made our brother stay inside the house, and my mother and me, we stood at the door trying to block the mob from coming inside. But then the large mob, around 200 of them, were in front of the house trying to pull us outside, and most of them were holding long sticks, and a guy with a big sharp iron rod, he was hitting my hand, and my hand started to bleed at the door, but I still stood there. And my mother, while standing at the door, my mother begged the crowd to let us go, since and even showed her service ID. She gave the service ID to one man, and that guy, and said she was the undersecretary of the Secretariat Office in Veterinary and Agriculture Department. And the guy, he actually agreed to let us go, but then the other mob, they were disagreeing with him and trying to pull us out of the house. And then a guy from the side, a tall guy, he was a very tall guy with a big body, he grabbed me by my hair, and pulled me out of the house. And we were all separated by that time, and they pulled me to the street. And at the site, by the next time I saw my brother, his head was already starting to bleed. He was at the site. My mother was with my brother, and she was begging the crowd to please stop doing those things on my brother. But then they grabbed me by my hair and pulled me to the street. And even while walking up to the street, they constantly hit me with sticks and the large stones on my back. I can even feel them right now as I'm talking. And as we reached the street, there were a guy with large, holding a big bamboo. He was he hit my head, and then I fell down on the road. But luckily, I did not lose my consciousness. I started, I stood up and I was searching for my family members. We were all separated. I turned back and I saw my auntie carrying the baby. She was carrying the baby the whole time. She was lying on the road, and women folk were hitting the baby. The crowds, most of the crowds were men, but then there were even women of around the same age as my mother. The women, the Merapai bees, they are known to be the peacekeepers of the community, one of the largest women folk community in Manipur. And they were involved, in adolescent boys and women and mostly men. And the women they did not even spare the baby. The women were hitting the baby, slapping and punching the baby, but my aunt, she tried her best to cover the baby. So luckily the baby is fine, but my aunt, she got hit several times on her head. And then on the street, I was looking around searching for my family, and then to my right I saw my brother running on the road trying to escape from the mob, but then he was chased. I ran up to him, and then he fell down on the roadside near an electric post. I ran up to him and tried and laid on him, trying to cover him up as a human shield. And the crowd, the mob, they came running up to us and pushed me away from my brother. And they were busy with my brother at that time. Like I've said, they were mostly attacking men, but they don't even spare us as well. And a guy from the mob, he whispered to me to run if I wanted to leave, while the mob were busy with my brother. And then I did not have any choice, since I can't go to my brother too. I started running in the opposite direction, away from the mob. I turned back once and I saw my cousin's sister. I ran to her and near my cousin's sister, my aunt was also on the road, lying on the road. Then I pulled her up, and the three of us and the baby, we started running in the opposite direction. And I turned back for the last time, and on the road I saw my brother lying on the road covered with blood, and my mother was right beside my brother. And the mob, they were clapping and laughing at my brother, like it was some sort of achievement for them. And then by the time we managed to escape from the mob, they started bringing out large iron rods, and we managed to escape from the crowd. And then the two Meitei guys, let's say A and B, they helped us, and then we got inside an office and they hid us in the top floor of a building inside. It was like a small colony, the place we hid. And then they locked the main gate, and we locked us up inside the building of one in the top floor of that building. And after 5 to 10 minutes, we started hearing sounds of tear gas exploding. So we just know that the police have arrived at that area. But Yeah, that's it.
How was the government building? How far was it from the accident site? I mean, from the spot where your brother was killed?
Around 2 minutes walk from that place.
2 minutes walk.
It was in the same line.
And two Methi youths, A and B, as you said.
Yes.
They took you. You means you, and then there was your aunt and your cousin sister, and baby was with your aunt, right?
Yes.
So four of you would go to the nearest government building, right?
Yes.
And you would hit there. You would stay there for next 5 hours.
Yeah, we stayed there for about 5 hours, and then the two guys A and B, they kept looking for ways to drop us to the nearest relief camp, but they couldn't immediately help us because the mob were right in front of the gate that day. The mob was not right in front but beside the gate. So the two guys, they were with the mob. They said if we stay here, they'll start to suspect us, so we will go out, mingle with the mob, and see when the situation gets better, we'll try to drop you off to the nearest camp. And I rang the two guys up and asked whether the things were getting better outside, but they said it was getting worse, and girls of your age are getting killed with knife in the nearby area, so there's no chance you can come out right now. So the two guys, they went out to mingle with the mob since they did not want to look different, and so we hid there for about 5 hours, and the two guys, they came to the place we hid and told us some mob saw us entering the place, so we can't stay here, and in the evening some of the guys, they'll get drunk and they'll come inside and check whether you're inside this building or not. And if they see you, in case they see you inside this building, the whole building will be at risk, and there's no chance of you surviving. And even if we go out now, they've already started checking all the vehicles one by one, and they even check the decky of the car, lifting and checking thoroughly everyone in the car. So there's no chance you can go out now, and you can't stay back either. And the two guys, they were thinking of ways to get us out. So and finally the guy, he told us he thought of an idea, and he said to see if we have any chance of getting out. He said he'll bring his cars, and the three of us and the baby, he would make us hide in the decky and see if we have chance. And suppose if we run into any mob in the road, there's no chance of you surviving, but since you can't stay here either, let's go and try out our luck. And he brought the car, and the three of us, me, my aunt, my cousin, and my baby, we fit inside that car. It was very tight and very dark, but since there's no way for us, we hid inside the decky, and he started driving. He drove as fast as he could, and luckily there was nobody on the road. And once we bumped into the speed breaker, and the baby started crying, and we were trying to distract the baby, showing him some videos, but the baby, it was too dark, so the baby cried as hard as she could. And the driver, he played music very loudly to distract the noise, and that's how we reached the camp, and we did not meet anyone on the road.
The two guys, they played loud music.
Yeah, he played loud music
to drown out the cries of baby.
Yes.
How long was the journey? How long did it take for you to reach the army camp? Did you reach the army camp or the CRPF camp?
First MR camp. Since it was impossible
Manipur Rifles camp.
Yes, it was impossible to go to the camp that we were going to go.
Where you were supposed to go?
Yeah, where we were supposed to go, since there were mobs on the road. And that's how we reached the first MR camp.
So you went to another camp which was easier. Yeah, not easier, but which was safer.
Safer, yes.
The route was safer, right?
about 10 to 15 minutes drive from the place we hid.
It must have been extremely difficult for you to
Yes.
to hide yourself in the boot of the car, 4 of you, including baby. What were you thinking when you were inside the dicky?
Like, we did not have any choice either. We were trying out our luck whether we could get to the camp, or suppose if we meet the mob on the way, we would just get killed, and we did not have any choice, so we managed to go with him. There was a small gap between the window and the car. There was a small light coming in, but we tried our best to stay away from that light too, since in case someone peeks at the back door, they can see us. So we tried our best to squeeze ourselves and as small as we can.
So finally you reached MR camp.
Yes.
But before you reached the MR camp, could you tell us about the slogans that the crowd was raising? And the line of questioning also, when you were asked to sit on a bench, right?
Yes.
In front of shops. Like, what were the questions that were asked?
Like I've said, a guy, he asked us whether we were cookies or not, and to defend ourselves, we said we were Mizo, and the guy have already agreed to let us go, but a guy from the backside shouted, "Cookies, street Mizos, they're all the same, and let us go if we're let us kill them, or if we're not going to do that, let us go already. Let them go already." The Métis women were my mom already started crying at that place since she was too scared, and a Métis women around the same age as my mother, she said, "You're just crying crocodile tears out here. Nothing will change with you crying here, shedding your tears here. Our Métis women are being raped openly out there in Churchanpur, and you're lucky enough to have met us, and then we're kind enough to do nothing to you," and stuff like that. And a guy, he actually agreed to let the women go, but the other mobs were threatening to cut our necks. And what's wrong? Why are you sparing the women? All of them are the same, and stuff like that. And while we escaped from the mob, a guy was following us and shouting at our back, you think how to, which is like a very, it's a slang word, the highest form of disrespect for tribals. And you think you're very great here in Imphal, or you think you can do whatever you do here in Imphal, and you guys here residing in Imphal, you're the mastermind of all these things, and stuff like that.
But since your mother was undersecretary with the Manipur government,
yes,
did your mother's credentials help you navigate the questioning from the crowd?
Yeah, like I've said, my mother, she sold her service ID to a guy, and he was already nodding his head to agreeing to let us go, but then the crowd, they disagreed with him and nearly came down on that guy too. And after some time, I don't know what they did with my mother's ID. It was already missing. So
at the incident spot, when you turned back and you saw your brother drenched in blood and your mother covering him, what about your sister-in-law? Your sister-in-law was also there, and what happened to your sister-in-law at the time?
When I looked back one last time, my brother was lying on the road, and my mother was lying on top of my brother, trying to cover him. And I did not see my sister-in-law. She was pulled away by the crowd. Like I've said, all of us are separated from each other. And the last time I looked back, I saw only my brother and my mother. And my sister-in-law, her whereabouts were unknown for the whole day. And we kept ringing up all the helpline numbers of hospitals and mentioned her name, but none of them received reports of my sister-in-law. And around 1 a.m. of the next day, we got to know that she's in the RIMS ICU with several head injury and blood clots on her brain, and both her hands were fractured.
Uh, when you reach MR camp, there were 4, right?
Yes.
And what happened at MR camp, and how did you reach Delhi?
We stayed in the MR camp for about 4 days, and my my relatives from outside the state, they booked. Actually, escorts were being arranged from the MR camp to several places, several other tribal places, but there was no route. There was even the officials say there's no way we could reach to our hometown that time, since the violence was getting worse even at the road.
Your hometown is Churchandpur,
Yes,
right?
it's in Church.
And at the time, your father was in Churchandpur.
Yes.
And your father is with the police department.
Yes, he works in the police department.
Hmm.
And there was no route from the place to our hometown. So we started looking for flight tickets, and my relatives from outside the state, they booked flight tickets for us. And we reached the camp on 4th May. We stayed there for 4th, 5th, and 6th May. On the evening of 6th May, we went to the airport, and even in the airport we can't get inside the airport if we don't have flight on the same day. But since we were too desperate to get inside the airport, like it was the safest place, even the MR camp and the refugee camps, we were constantly hearing rumors about the mob trying to attack the places and all. And even one night, the police heard rumors about the mobs coming to attack us, even in the camp. So, like they were burning us. Even spending a night was very hard. Spending a day in the camp was very hard. So we were too desperate to get out of the camp. So on our flights were booked on 10 May for 10th May, and we reached the airport on 6 May. And how we got into the airport, since the ticket was sent to us through SMS, we edited the message and changed the date from 10 to 6 May just so that we can get into the gate. And we stayed in the airport for 4 days, and on the 10th May I reached Delhi.
What about your sister-in-law? When did she arrive here?
My sister-in-law, she's in the ICUs, but she reached Delhi on 12 May. The army and our relatives, he helped us out and arranged an escort from the hospital to the airport, and that's how she reached Delhi.
And was she treated in Delhi?
She's currently ongoing treatment.
She's currently under
treatment.
Yes. How do you see the Manipur government's role in this violence? Because you said you tried helpline numbers.
Yeah.
And specifically you mentioned 112 and there was no answer. Did the ring go through or was it busy?
No, it didn't work. Totally didn't work.
So how do you see the Manipur government's role in containing the violence?
Like I've said, on that day while we were hiding, I rang up all the contact numbers of the officers. I couldn't reach any of them, but a police officer, however, picked up the call and said he was also helpless since the mob was too big. The violence was too intense, so he couldn't get into that area either. And I got to know from a relative working in the police department that the chief minister ordered the police not to move around that day when the violence reached its peak, and there was no help from the government side, though I contacted them a lot. Even my cousins from the second car, they contacted everyone they knew from the police department, and they said they would help, but then, like I've said, no, the police could not enter the area as well.
I'll again go back to a little bit to the accident, to the incident spot. There were 2 cars, right? First car, you were in the first car.
Yes.
What happened to the second car?
The second car, it was quite far from us, so they managed to take a U-turn and go back.
Did the second car see that you were holed up or you were intercepted by crowd?
Yes, they saw us from a distance and they took a U-turn and went back.
With this violence, ethnic fault lines have become more prominent between tribals and non-tribals. And for you, it has come as a huge personal cost. While on the one side, you saw the killing of your mother and brother at the hands of Metis, while on the other side there were saviors. I mean, there were people who helped you out, who rescued you. Maybe while you were questioned, there were a couple of voices asking or pleading with the crowd to let them go. And in the office compound also, there were two guys, A and B, who arranged a car and took you to the MR camp. How do you see, what's your view on that?
I would say it was purely out of humanity. They might have seen us in the crowd, getting beaten up by the crowds. Even the child was crying the whole time since they slapped the baby as well. And yeah, it was purely out of humanity.
Since your ancestral house is in Churchandpur, where the violence broke out on May 3rd, after the rally. Your parents wanted to settle in Churchandpur, right?
Yes.
But you and your siblings, you want to stay in Imphal.
Yes.
Could you tell us why there is sort of, I won't say disagreement, why you want to stay in Imphal and your parents want to stay?
Yeah.
I mean, now your father wants to stay in Churchandpur.
First of all, the only reason we're staying in Imphal is because our parents were working in Imphal. Even the even the main offices, the health sectors, education facilities, most of the big institutes, they're all situated in Imphal. And even for me personally, since I'm a science student, Imphal was much more better than me. Even back there in our hometown, the education facility for science is not that good. So overall, it was more convenient for me to stay in Imphal. And even our hospitals back in our hometown, the test facilities and all, they're not good enough. So even the patients, they get referred to Imphal, most of them, when their illness gets serious. And even for my parents, since Churchandpur is the place they were brought up in, they naturally prefer to stay during in our hometown in Churchandpur. We've been staying in Imphal for more than 30 years. Right after my mother got her service and she managed to get a quarter, and since my siblings and me, since we've been staying in Imphal, we were born there, we were brought up there. We prefer to stay in Imphal. Most of our friends are there, and Imphal was like our home to us. Even if our parents, they settled there only for their jobs, and so to our siblings, to me and my siblings, it was like a home to us since we've done all our schooling there, and most of our friends were also Métis. We were already so comfortable with staying in Imphal, and yes, that's the reason.
Was security another reason why your parents wanted to stay in Churchandpur?
Yes, because in Imphal, we're the minority, to be honest. And in the hometown, since we were living with people of our same community, it gives us a sense of security as well. And like, we all have love for our hometown, so when things got worse that day, we all prefer to be in our hometown.
Does Imphal still remain can you call it your home after this violence?
Not anymore. Imphal, it killed my family, it murdered my family, it took away everything we have, and I would not call it a home anymore. it's more of a painful memory for us.
Will you be able to go back and continue your study in Imphal?
In this condition and with this state of mind, I don't think I would be able to continue my studies and also live again there in Imphal. It would be too hard for me to, and yeah, that's it.
Are you in touch with some of your friends who are from the tribal community who think the same way, who are right now maybe living in Imphal, but they also want to go back to their hometown, hilly areas?
Yes, but most of them has they're in other parts of the country right now. They fled from Imphal.
The locality where your family lived, your family was living in government quarters, right?
Yes.
Was it a mixed population, or was it mostly populated by tribal communities?
We were all living together, the Métis and the tribals. It's mostly the same ratio, the Métis and the tribals.
When you fled your house, after that or even before that, did you receive any support from the Métis community or your neighbors? Did you receive any call messages?
Yes, our neighbors living one house away from us. Like I said, when we went to our relative's house, which was around 5-minute walk from our place, my aunt's daughter-in-law, she was 9 months pregnant. She's 9 months pregnant, so she can't move around like us. So she stayed the night in our neighbor's place, which is one house away from us.
After the violence, it seems that there's a huge lack of trust between the tribals and non-tribals. Do you think that this issue or the trust can be restored between the two communities, or can it happen at all?
As in my case, it will be very hard to trust the community again. It will never be the same as before, and I would not say all Métis community, all the people from that community are bad, since I myself was also rescued by 2 men from the community. But after experiencing the mob violence myself and seeing my mother and my mother and my brother being murdered openly on the road, it would be very hard for me to accept them again or to live as if nothing had happened like before. Everything changed overnight, and then they became our enemies overnight.
What would you miss most about your mother and brother?
My mother, she's a very busy woman. She's a working woman. And we don't get to spend much time together. So in the evening, after we have our dinner, we would sit together for about 1 to 2 hours before we sleep. Not just with my mother, with my brother, our whole family, we would sit together for an hour or 2, and that's the time I cherish the most, even when things were good. But I would miss everything about them. I would not get to see them anymore in this world. And my mother and my brother, they were like a part of me. In everything I do, they would try to help me. They would assist me, they would guide me in everything I do. I need them a lot too. And so I miss everything about them.
Kim, thank you so much for speaking with Newslaundry. We really appreciate that you have come out and spoke your mind, what you went through, what your family went through.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
The subscription model is something that keeps Newslaundry afloat, but we need hundreds of thousands of people to completely transform the news ecosystem. So you pay for news, so it serves you. So click on the link with this video, subscribe to Newslaundry and pay to keep news free, और गर्व से कहो मेरे खर्च पर आजाद है खबरें.